Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast recap video for UFC Fight Night Kansas City. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Absolutely nothing, as always. And yesterday's fights, if you missed them already, the Ground and Pound podcast is going to break them all down for you, giving our opinions, talking about what happened during the fights. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Carlos, are you ready to get into the first matchup on the prelims?
Yeah, let's do it, bro.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So first up, we had Joselyne Edwards absolutely knocking the snot out of Chelsea Chandler in the first round. And if you missed it, I was not expecting this one. I have to admit, I thought this was going to be a decision. I thought we were going to see a lot of fence clinching, and boy was I wrong. As you can tell, my brain is scrambled from what actually happened. But Edwards knocked her out in the first round. She was able to corner up against the fence and put hands on her, and Stockton goes to sleep. Chelsea Chandler went flat out, and the referee stopped it, and that was pretty much it. She didn't receive a bonus, which kind of surprised me. I'm a little bit disappointed in that. She did get on the mic and talk about going to Panama for the UFC. She said that the Panama crowd, the Panama community in the world over there would enjoy a UFC event, and she wants to get the UFC over there, which I thought, shout out to her. That was good for her. But overall, great performance. I thought this one was going to be boring, so I was happy to get this one out of the way. I don't know about you, Carlos. What did you think about this matchup?
I didn't think it was going to be boring. I just thought it was going to be a little bit longer, and we would see Chelsea get beat up, a few more minutes each round. But I don't know. I'm not impressed with her, So in her fight, she's not as active. So I was very happy Jaqueline got her out of there. Was it Jacqueline? I totally
Joselyne,
forgot that
Joselyne.
name now. Joselyne. Yeah, I was just happy that Joselyne got her out there quick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually only Bilal whose name you can't remember, but yeah, honestly, Joselyne Edwards did her thing. I did notice at one point as well when she was putting hands on her that Chelsea kind of just backed up and stood there against the fence. She did not circle out. I don't think she was even hurt at that point. I just think that I don't know, she looked like she didn't really want to be there. She didn't really have the athleticism to get the takedowns like we talked about in the breakdown video. If you guys tuned into that, this fight went pretty much how we thought it was going to go. We thought it was all going to be one-way traffic, and it was. So first round knockout there for Joselyne Edwards. Thought it was going to be a decision, but ultimately Carlos and I picked the right person. And next up, we had Timothy Cuamba with the somewhat of an upset against Roberto Romero. And I have to admit, this one I had a little bit of a problem with, as Carlos knows, which he knows what's coming. But Timothy Cuamba, I'm going to start off by saying, he did look impressive in there. His striking was good, fighting on the outside. I like the knee up the middle that he was able to throw and daze Roberto with. He looked pretty good in there. He was able to get his first UFC win, now 1-2 in the UFC. As we said on the breakdown, he is probably the better striker out of the two. And I just thought Romero was going to come in here and kind of dog walk him, honestly. I thought he looked pretty impressive in his performance against David Onama. I thought that he was going to be levels above. And he just was getting touched up in the second round. The second round was where it all ended. Timothy Cuamba was able to get the knockout. And where I stand with this one was I thought this one was an early stoppage. I really didn't like this one at all. He got dazed by the knee for sure. He did hit the ground, but it wasn't like he fell unconscious, like face first or anything like that. He hit the canvas. He tried to bounce right back up, and the referee stopped it. So I had a little bit of an issue with the stoppage. It wasn't one of the more common referees, so I didn't name and shame this week. For those of you familiar on the Ground and Pound podcast, I like to get these referees' names and hold them accountable and name and shame, but not this week. I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. He did have a few decent performances later on as a referee, but hats off to Timothy Cuamba. He did get the job done. One of the only picks that Carlos and I both got wrong on the card. I think we both had Roberto Romero, but 0-2 now for Roberto Romero, so we'll see what he can do, see if he gets another fight inside the UFC, but hats off to Timothy, man, for getting it done. Carlos, what did you think of this fight and this matchup?
I thought Cuamba came out and looked absolutely perfect. His 1-2 down the middle was pretty quick. Didn't throw too many leg kicks. Problem being was that 1-2 was always there because Romero did not move his head as he was coming in. He kind of just stayed right in front of him. Didn't even try to swing from. I mean, he was bobbing from side to side. The problem was he was doing it from so far out. Like Cuamba wasn't even ready to attack at that point, so it was useless. But that's the one thing about MMA that's interesting is if you use a lot of that head movement, guys will throw that, kick to your lead leg and start to soften you up. But there are ways to do it without getting your leg chewed up and getting out of the way of danger. And they just got to get back on the, get back to training and start working on that. Good job to Cuamba.
Yeah, for sure. And to touch a little bit upon the early stoppage, I did just want to say too that I just think you just got to give the guy a little bit longer. I think he got hit with a shot, and obviously his equilibrium was a little bit out, but he jumped in. He didn't give the guy Roberto Romero a chance to actually kind of gather himself and fight back. He looked like he was ready to get in on a shot on wrestling and try to attack the legs of Cuamba with a double leg straight away. So I was just disappointed to see the fact that the referee didn't really give him an opportunity. I do think Roberto Romero is a tough kid too. He demonstrated that in his last fight against David Onama. I would like to see him get a little bit longer. And before we move on, Carlos, did you have a problem with the stoppage, or were you on the same anger train as myself?
I thought, was it early? Yeah, it was a tad bit early, but also the way that he fell down wasn't that bad. But the way he was trying to get back up and his hands kind of folded behind him, I was like, that's kind of a sign that the mind's just a little bit stronger than the body wants it to be. And I just know that if you gave him a few more minutes, everything would have caught up, and he's tough enough to come back. He was getting touched up though pretty bad before that, so I don't know how it would have went, but I don't think he would have got finished. But he got kicked earlier, and he took it, and he's taken that 1-2, and that knee is what wobbled him because he tied into. So I don't know if he had an answer for Cuamba, but it would have been nice to see like if he could come back from that. But I didn't have too much of a problem with the stoppage.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, hats off to, in the famous words of South Park, Timmy, for getting it done. And next up, we had Jaqueline Amorim with the second round submission. And for those of you that tuned into my Best Bets video this week, she was one of our props, second round submission for Amorim. And she brought us the dollar this week. And second round submission, she pretty much dominated the fight from start to finish. She was in our confident parlay. She made us some money this week, so hats off to her. And Polyana Viana pretty much didn't have an answer for it. She got taken down with ease. She did have Merab Dvalishvili in her corner, but not that made any difference because he can't fight for her. Amorim came in here. She got the takedown pretty early. She was able to control her on the ground. And one of the things I did want to mention, which I want to talk to Carlos about, is when she get onto mount, you can see in the top image on your screen there, we see a lot of fighters nowadays. They kind of like to sit in half guard because they know they can pin that hip to the floor and land elbows, land ground and pound, and really just keep that fighter on their back and keep them on the ground with good control. When she was in mount, she did a fantastic job of not getting bucked off. She was still able to land elbows. She was still able to utilize a 12-6 elbow, the new rule change. Ultimately, obviously, being able to get a finish inside the second round. But I was impressed with her ability to stay in mount and kind of hook those legs underneath to keep control, which we don't often see from people. When they get into mount, a lot of times now, fighters are very, very good at bucking and getting those people off of them. But she did a fantastic job of staying there, great control, and ultimately got the finish and put some money in our wallets this week for our Best Bets video. But what did you think of the performance, Carlos? Is there any shockers in there? And what did you think about her ability to stay in control and mount?
I actually just thought that this was a flawless victory. She was in no danger at any point and completely dominated and controlled Polyana Viana. When it comes to the mount, she wasn't. What's very impressive is that she wasn't very high on the mount. So normally, if you buck, it doesn't make a difference if you're that high, but you also take yourself away from landing elbows. She was in that mid range where if the hips come high enough, she could buck you off, but her being able to wrap her legs underneath was able to keep her stable, and she's probably had tons of hours of riding, not in any filthy way. Maybe a horse, maybe in training. I don't know, but nothing crazy like that. I just think a woman knows how to ride in the mount. It's a beautiful thing, and she got it done.
Amen. Amen. Yeehaw, Polyana Viana. Yeah, next up, we had the first bonus of the night. We had Wellmaker getting the finish on Cameron Saaiman. And, boy, with this one, get Cameron Saaiman a blanket, get him a bed, get him a duvet. He went to sleep. $50K for Wellmaker. We obviously talked a lot about it on our breakdown. And I think ultimately both of us, did we both pick, did you pick Wellmaker in this one, Carlos, or did you pick Cameron Saaiman?
I went with Wellmaker.
Yeah. I was going to say, we both talked about the power of Wellmaker. He obviously has nice counters and nice hands, and he demonstrated it. And I picked Saaiman. I thought that he was going to be able to get it done here just in this matchup. I thought he was going to be a little bit more well-rounded, but ultimately Wellmaker proved me wrong. And I was a little bit worried about the chin of Saaiman after being knocked out in his last fight against Peyton Talbot. But even just the way that he fell, I had no problem with this stoppage. He went completely sideways. It's one for you guys to check out if you Google on YouTube after we've breaking down these fights. He fell at a very funny angle. He literally had his hands underneath him, underneath his head, like he was kind of falling asleep. And yeah, honestly, get this guy a mattress because he was out. And Wellmaker, honestly, he gets on the mic. He talks about fighting in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a fight card that's coming up. I think Joaquin Buckley's headlining that one against Usman. He wants to get on that card, being from the area. And honestly, a great performance from him. Looked just like he was in the Contender Series. Nice right hand, gets a finish, and ultimately takes home 50 G's for his UFC debut. Carlos, what did you think of this matchup, and did it go how you thought it would?
When you ended up taking Saaiman on this one, I didn't see that was a problem because I do feel that he's more well-rounded
Mm.
than Wellmaker. You know what I mean? But the thing is just like we were talking about the other night, is that he had to have an absolutely perfect game the entire night. Like he couldn't get touched with anything because Wellmaker has the ability to put you out like he did. And you want to get into an exchange with him, that's going to be a problem. And Wellmaker got hit at the same time too. He just didn't feel it, but Saaiman felt his. And yeah, I like the kid. I like Saaiman. I think he's an awesome, like personality for the sport. He just seems so wholesome and nice. But on this night, that's not going to help you being wholesome and nice. You got to get mean. You got to throw these bombs like Wellmaker was, and he just wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I like Simon's too. I think ultimately that the power was the big difference maker here, and it'll be interesting to see if he can bounce back from these last two losses. But Wellmaker looks impressive. I like to see somebody test out their wrestling on him and see how his wrestling and grappling holds up. But power in the hands for sure. It'd be interesting to see who they give him for that Atlanta card coming up. Next up, we had DaMon Blackshear against Alatengheili, and I put very impressive on this one. And obviously, he didn't get the finish, but he was able to really show off his striking, which I thought was pretty impressive. I've always known that Blackshear has respectable striking, but he was really able to put it all together. He was kind of finding a nice flow state in this particular matchup, landing knees up the middle, as you can see in your bottom right corner of your screen. Letting the hands go, nice teep kicks up the middle. And Carlos and I had not necessarily a debate, but kind of a chuckle the other day when we had the full card breakdown. We talked about how Alatengheili, you could watch some of his fights and he becomes a wrestler. He wrestles for the whole fight. And then other times he lets it go with his hands and he only seems to use his hands and he never really mixes it in. So obviously the one who wanted to throw down with the hands showed up, and ultimately Blackshear got the better of him on the feet. And we've seen a lot of performances with Blackshear now where, he's mixed in the grappling, he's mixed in the different submission threats, and ultimately got finishes on the ground. But he wanted to show out with his striking, and he did exactly that. I thought he looked impressive. The commentary team was talking about the second round being close, even though Blackshear outlanded him 40-19 on significant strikes. I don't know what that was about. I don't know if they were paying attention or what, but yeah, ultimately Blackshear was able to get it done. Alatengheili did try to mix in a takedown. I believe it was in the second round, but ultimately Blackshear stuffed it, and he looked pretty impressive to me. I like what he did. We know he's a threat on the ground. We know he's now a threat on the feet. So it'd be interested to see who the UFC gave him or gives him for his next matchup. But did you see anything in there that you liked, Carlos, from Blackshear, and were you surprised at all from the fight itself?
I actually wasn't too impressed with Blackshear. I mean, only because of the opponent. Alatengheili is not very impressive on his feet. He's game, like he wants to throw, but he's not very impressive. He was kind of getting caught on walking into a few things as he was coming because he's got to try to close the distance, and Blackshear just took advantage of that, and I thought that was perfect. That's the right game plan. Was it impressive? It was good. It's one of his better performances on the feet. I'll give you that. But if he had done it against like a more credible opponent, I would have been like, sure, his stand up is looking great. But it does look good. He's not the biggest stand up threat when it comes to that, but he's smart enough to keep himself out of danger. And his bread and butter is mostly the grappling aspect of his game. And yeah, he's going on a little run now. So good job, Mr. Blackshear.
Yeah. Tough Russian judge over here, ladies and gentlemen. But no, I think Carlos is right. I think we got to see more from Blackshear at a higher level of competition to see, how good his striking and what his ceiling is. Because Carlos is right. I think Alatengheili struggled to really close the distance. Had a pretty significant reach deficit against Blackshear here, and ultimately, I think that was too much for him to overcome. But a little harsh there from Carlos, but it's all right. It's all right.
Hey, I'm happy he won. That's all I.
Yeah,
all
I'm happy.
about.
I'm happy he won too because he made us some money. He was part of our parlay on the best bets. But we had a great night with him, so Blackshear was able to get it done, and I'm not complaining. But one guy I am a little frustrated with is John Castaneda. There was a little bit of dissension between me and Carlos for this one. I picked John Castaneda. He had Gutierrez, and I am a big fan of Gutierrez. I like the song he walks out to, but I didn't pick him because I didn't think he was dangerous enough on the feet to keep Castaneda off of him. And boy, was I wrong. He was piecing him up on the feet with the hands. His hands looked good. It wasn't just the low kicks. And my biggest gripe here with Castaneda, I said this to Carlos when we were watching the fight, but Castaneda got the takedown or fell into a takedown, however you want to really sort of word it, in the first round. And then for whatever reason, he decided to disengage with like maybe 60 seconds or whatever it was left in the round. I would have liked to have just seen him ride that round out on top, keep downward pressure. He would have won that round. Instead, he decides to get up. He gets hit with a couple of up kicks. He gets up off the ground. Gutierrez gets up, and he's able to drop Castaneda, which ultimately probably won him the round. I think if Castaneda did a good job of just staying heavy on top, ride that round out, he would have won that one, and he would have won the third round, which is what all the judges scored it. I believe this one was a split decision, which is why I'm going to ask Carlos, did you agree with the decision? I personally did. I thought Castaneda could have done a better job of winning round one and just being a little bit smarter. He would have won the fight in my eyes. But ultimately, I did think Gutierrez did win 29-28. He did a good job in rounds 1 and 2, did what he was supposed to do. Yeah, good job on Carlos's pick. Castaneda, do better, man. Come on now. What did you think, Carlos, of this matchup?
I thought that he had a mental lapse in the first round because had he finished on top, he definitely would have won the first in the eyes of the judges. Definitely won the third round because he did what I know you thought he was going to do for most of the fight, was just kind of push the tempo of the fight. And he waited till the third round to do it. I think in the first round, Gutierrez does his leg attack. He does his work there. But he mixed in the hands a little bit more than maybe Castaneda was used to. I don't know. It looked like he threw a few more punches than normal. But Gutierrez still fought the exact same way. He had no sense of urgency, kind of chill, waited back, didn't press too much. And Castaneda just kind of fell into the game of, I'm going to fight at your pace. And I think that's what ultimately got him. If he had started out all the rounds like round 3, he would have been just fine. Yeah. So we got lucky.
Yeah. I thought this was a pretty good fight. And one thing I will give Gutierrez credit for is I kind of put him down as somebody that he can't really hurt people apart from with the calf kick, but his hands look pretty decent, I got to admit. So obviously when he comes forward or he lands the counters with his hands, he does look pretty good. But well done, Carlos, for picking that one. And Castaneda, I just wish you had a little bit more fight IQ, buddy, because if you'd have stayed on top, you would have made me look good. And that brings us to Evan Elder taking on Gage Young, and this one was interesting. I don't really think that Evan Elder was in too much danger at any point, but one thing I was a little bit concerned about was he was breathing pretty heavy in that fight. I think he's was trying to get Gage Young out of there in the first round or maybe the second round, but he seemed to be sort of loading up on his shots, and he was landing big body kicks. He was going to the calf. He was throwing a lot of leather with the hands, but I think in the third round he looked visibly tired, heavy breathing, and he's pretty muscle bound as a lighter in a lighter weight class. And I honestly was thinking to myself, like, he just needed to touch, not necessarily load up on the shots, but he looked impressive in there. Both guys 9-2, Gage Young, I don't think that it necessarily hurt him to lose to Evan Elder on 4 days notice. I think the UFC will probably call him up at some point to fight on a upcoming card later on in the year. But he did a good job of pressuring as well. In the fourth round, he was able to kind of, keep the fight remotely competitive. I just think he kind of started a little bit too late in that third round, and ultimately I think Evan Elder's big powerful shots that he was landing, that he was loading up on, kind of stood out to the judges in this one. And again, another guy that we picked, another guy that we both felt fairly confident in, was able to get it done. But later on in other fights against different opponents, maybe not necessarily on short notice. I think Evan Elder needs to be careful on loading up on shots and, kind of picking his shots a little bit better as opposed to, winging everything as hard as he can because his gas tank did look like it was being hit by that. But overall, both Carlos and I picked him. Another good pick for us this week. Carlos, what did you think of this matchup and what do you think of the performance?
I thought exactly what you thought was he thought 4 days notice or a week, whatever it was, and he's gonna get this kid out of there soon. And just watching this kid Young's fights, he looks like a durable kid. He's pretty tough, and he's actually just. I'm not saying he's learning how to be a mixed martial artist, but he's learning how to put things together as well. Will he do it later on? Nobody knows. But if you're gonna call yourself the phenom and you can't get somebody out of there on 4 days' notice, like you got a lot of work to do. Now you look very good, and the strikes look crisp. He had a hard time taking them down, so like I think he only went for like 2 or 3 takedown attempts, nothing crazy. Um, yeah, I mean you can't label yourself that and think that you're a top contender. He's got a lot of work to do because he put a lot of punishment on this kid, especially to the body through the first 2 rounds, and that kid just weathered the storm. When I saw Elder taking deep breaths through his chest, number one, that's the worst way to take a deep breath. It's like he was trying to flex and breathe at the same time just to, get those muscles full for the camera. The one thing that I was thinking was if this kid Young can just put a combination together, he might be able to get him out of there. And I think at that point he started realizing it and tried to push the tempo a little bit. Like he was able to land a little to make it look like he won that round because he like halfway through the round is where he started working. If he had started that round working, who would have known what would happen? But Evan Elder did a good job. You're supposed to try to get people out of there, so I'm not going to be upset about him getting winded trying to rip punches and kicks because I love seeing it. But you got to find that space where I know it's hurting him, but I can make it through every round, and he's got to work on that.
Yeah, yeah. And Gage Young's cardio looked pretty decent for 4 days' notice. He was obviously in shape, and he had a good poker face throughout the fight. He didn't look like he necessarily was visibly being hurt too much by the shots of Evan Elder. So hats off to him. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does later on, and maybe he comes in and has a better performance than he did in this particular matchup. But on 4 days' notice, you can't be mad. And next up, we had the featured prelim. We had Matt Schnell taking on Jimmy Flick. And this is actually one of my favorite fights on the card. I mean, a lot of people talk about they don't necessarily like a whole lot of grappling and, scrambles in particular, matchups in MMA. You always hear the crowd booing. But I enjoy watching the scrambles. I like seeing the technical element of MMA, especially on the ground. And this was grappler's delight in some respect. But one thing it was not a smart fight from both gentlemen. Matt Schnell's fight IQ, yet again, to me, just makes me laugh. He did get the win. He was able to pull off the win, but sometimes he makes some of the most boneheaded decisions in fights, as Carlos and I both, implied on our full card breakdown we did on Wednesday. And the thing with Matt Schnell is there's times where he can be in a dominant position. He'll be in half guard and he'll reach around to try and get a guillotine, and he'll pull guillotine and let the guy right back on top of him. And then that guy rides out the round, and now he's getting beaten up on the on bottom. And it's just like, dude, you're in a dominant position. Stop trying to go for the submission. Stay up on top. Land elbows, land ground and pound. Take what the fight. There's an expression in basketball. It's like take what the defense gives you. It's kind of like one going to apply to this fight here. Is take what the guy gives you. At the end of the day, if you're in half guard, and you have the opportunity to do some damage, let some get some damage going. If you can get the fight on the feet where this guy doesn't have a lot of success and his chin hasn't held up, keep the fight on the feet. Don't play his game. And I mean, I knew Flick was going to be able to get takedowns early on in this fight. He does tend to have a tendency to gas in a lot of fights, which he did in this one. I think he really slowed down by the third. But Matt Schnell's just got to do a little bit better when he's in there. I think he fights a little bit off of, I don't know if it's emotion or, he's just adrenaline in there. He's just go, go, go. But he's always looking for the finish, though, so he is always entertaining. That was why this fight was the featured prelim. But couple of boneheaded mistakes, but ultimately Matt Schnell was able to get it done. And both Carlos and I, again, picked Matt Schnell in this particular matchup. But what did you think of the performance, Carlos? What did you think of the fight overall?
Same thing you said was it wasn't the brightest IQ fight, you know what I mean? And I just know that Schnell is a lot better than that than to make this fight difficult for him and jump for a guillotine against a guy who wants this fight to be on the ground. At least make him work for the takedown. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I know it was probably an ego thing. He felt, okay, you think you're good on the ground, I could be good on the ground too. So maybe that's it. I don't know what it was. Or maybe he's just not thinking and he's just in the mode like, I'm going to do whatever I can to win. I don't know what it is. But luckily he pulled it out. I thought he put himself in some bad situations, especially like I think those 2 times where he was getting up off the ground, using the cage to walk up, and he got put in a guillotine himself. One of them was in, and I think on the way down, Flick probably like adjusted his hands, and then another one it was in, and he just turned his body at the last second. He got out, but to put yourself in that type of harm's way with somebody wants the fight to be there. Kids, if you're a Matt Schnell fan, just don't fight like him. Just know that you want to keep it in your best area to win, as you'll see in the main event.
Yep, for sure. And that brought us to the main card, and I'm going to let Carlos hit this one off. We had Ikram Aliskerov taking on Andre Muniz, and let us know what you thought about the matchup, Carlos, and did you enjoy the performance?
I mean, this wasn't really much of a matchup either. It was more dominated on one side. Like we thought, Aliskerov was going to just impose himself on him. That left hook that he landed, it didn't even look like he put anything on it, and the equilibrium just went. I was kind of surprised that Muniz not really trying to, you got the longer reach, throw a little bit more, put a little bit more volume out there, and you got the longer legs, throw a few more kicks, work, do something. And, if you can't get it to the ground because that this guy's going to smother a lot of your submissions, you got to try to do something. And he had no answer for anything Aliskerov had. And we kind of saw that happen. And I was just surprised that left hook, I had to be honest with you, it looked like he just touched the left hook and was getting ready to let go of the right. And that's what dropped him. And, he just hopped on him and got the finish. So good job, Aliskerov.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of surprised me. The commentary team kept talking about how, Ikram looks like he's going to shoot in a minute. And, like he's setting up the takedown. And I was thinking to myself, like, have these guys ever actually watched Ikram Aliskerov? Because this guy likes to throw down. His wrestling he usually uses as secondary. Like, he likes to throw the hands. He has pretty good power in his hands, pretty decent boxing. So I was kind of surprised that they thought he was going to set up the takedown, because in my head I was like, he's looking to land that right hand. And like Carlos said, it didn't even get to the right hand. The left hook that he threw before that was the one that knocked Muniz's equilibrium off, and his kind of fell a little bit funny too. It was kind of a late delayed reaction, but that's the kind of the thing with MMA sometimes. Once those small gloves hit you in the right spot, you feel it, you go down, and ultimately that was all that she wrote with Muniz. And we've seen him now, he gets finished on the ground, he gets finished on the feet, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with Muniz moving forward, 35 or 36 now as well. So not necessarily the best performance from him, but like Carlos and I said, we both thought Ikram, pretty confident pick here, was going to get it done wherever this fight went, and ultimately he got it done in the first round with the knockout. So hats off to him again for proving us correct. And that brought us to what Dana White called the fight of the night, and both guys getting 50 Gs for the fight of the night. And if you missed it, this one was an absolute barn burner for as long as it lasted. We had Randy Rude Boy Brown with the knockout of Dalby, and Dalby had never been finished up until this point. It had been proven to be very durable. They started trading in the pocket. They started swarming Brown, and Brown was able to land a nice right hook that landed right on the button, ultimately knocked Dalby to the ground face first. As 2 Chainz would say, face first, face down, ass up, and that's pretty much exactly how Dalby ended up in this particular matchup. And Brown gets on the mic and talks some shit, saying about how he felt disrespected by Dalby. He said that Dalby said he didn't really know too much about him or something like that. That he always eye pokes and all this stuff. And Randy obviously wanted to prove a point that he was better in this particular matchup. He had a little bit of bad blood coming in. Ultimately, he got the job done, and both guys walk away with 50 Gs, which I'm sure is going to be nice for Dalby sitting in that hospital bed to know that at least he's got 50 Gs extra sitting in his bank account. But knockout of the night, performance of the night for sure. But Carlos, what did you think of this matchup matchup. And did you see it going like that? I thought it was going to be kind of a pitter-patter striking match decision for staying on the outside for Brown, but ultimately he got it done with the knockout. How did you see it going?
I do think that Brown would have been the one going for the finish. I thought that Dalby was going to try to stay safe and look for opportunities at times. Like I didn't think it was going to go the way that it did. I just think there was a point in the first round because that's where it kind of started. Dalby was fighting the way he normally does, and then he got clipped with something, and his nose went. That nose was nasty, but his nose went left, and the rest of them went south, north, and wherever it went, they weren't in the same direction. And all I know is that at that point, I think he was like, fuck this. I got to just try to get him out of there too. And turned it into something beautiful. I mean, yes, he didn't get the decision, but I am sure that Dalby and all of his fights, how many did you say it was? 29 fights?
Yeah.
I think he gained more fans after last night than he's ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and actually, good point, Carlos. I actually forgot about that in round one. The second round was so chaotic. For those of you that missed it, Dalby's nose basically got completely broken and was pointing to the side. So, as Carlos rightfully said, they were pointing in two different directions. But the cornerman did a fantastic job, of kind of cracking it back into place. And I don't know if it was the cornerman or if it was another Randy Brown right hand that cracked it back into place. But ultimately, Randy Brown, good performance from him. Great fight, very entertaining. And for those of you that missed it, this is definitely one to check out on YouTube for sure after the breakdown. But hats off to Randy Brown and enjoy the money, fellas. And that brought us to a little bit of gloating from me. This is time for me to get my revenge for the Castaneda Gutierrez fight. But yeah, I had a boost in this one. He was able to get it done. Michel Pereira didn't necessarily look like himself in there. I'm going to ask Carlos in a minute what he thought kind of went wrong with Michel Pereira. But Abus Magomedov was the only underdog on this whole entire card. And in our best bets video, we had him. We picked him. I didn't see a lot of people picking him, but we went with him this week as an underdog. If you watched that video, you would have got some money in on him and you would have made some dollar. And ultimately, he did try to mix in a little bit of wrestling, but I think he was able to hurt Pereira on the feet early, which kind of slowed him down a little bit. And a little bit of, not just damage, but also just that forward pressure, getting in the clinch a little bit and kind of wearing on Pereira, I think might have hurt him early on and kind of worn on him. But we can all admit, even somebody like myself who picked Abus, I don't think Pereira necessarily looked like himself. I don't know what was going on there, but hats off to Abus for making me look good. Thank you for the money in our wallets. And Carlos, what did you think of Michel Pereira's performance? And did you think he looked like himself in there?
Number one, I'm glad you won. You know what I mean? And the fans that bet on Abus, I am glad you guys won too. But I have heard a lot of people saying about since the fight online that they're happy. I mean, they don't know what happened to Michel Pereira. He didn't look like himself. If that's what Abus Nurmagomedov is going to look like, or Magomedov, that was a horrible performance. He was just as tired as Pereira was, and he did maybe a little bit more in each round than him. That was embarrassing for both guys. I don't know why everybody's just looking at the Pereira. So Pereira got hit with a few shots in each round. I don't think it was anything that hurt him. He felt it. He definitely reacted to it, but it's not anything that hurt him badly. I think it was a case of Ngannou fighting Miocic the first time. Then he comes out to fight Derek Lewis after being dead tired in the ring. Now he doesn't want to throw any punches because he doesn't want to get tired. That's all it is fatigue. He doesn't want to get tired. He wants to be able to last those rounds. The problem is when you do that and you're used to being an explosive first round finisher, you're learning how to fight. And it sounds stupid for somebody like Pereira, who's got, I don't know how many pro fights, that you're now learning how to fight, but you are just winning on physical abilities and speed, power, all that stuff. Now, at Bose, you're a wrestler and you can't take this guy down. And he's not throwing, but you can't hurt him. And now you're just as tired as he is in the second round and the third. And you didn't really land a ton of punches. So I'm like, why the hell are you tired? And that's why I told you, I go, both these guys have the same gas tank as, actually they may be worse than Conor McGregor. I've never seen anything like it. So I don't see, I mean, like I said, I'm glad you won. But when it comes to oh, why did Pereira look so bad? I think everybody's got to ask, why does Abus look tired? Because he got to walk forward and threw whatever he wanted to, and nothing came back at him. At the end of the fight, he's like, I won the fight. No, you you survived, and I don't know why. I don't know, man. That's just me. You didn't take any punishment. Why the hell are you so tired? But
That Abus impression was spot on. For those of you that missed it, it was literally like a live depiction of what Abus sounded like at the end of the fight. But yeah, hats off to Abus. I do like Michel Pereira. He's always entertaining, and I'd like to see him just go back to his explosive ways and just say fuck it, throw caution to the wind, and just come out hot. I think he's much better off like that, fighting to his strengths like that. Don't worry about your gas tank. If it happens, it happens. But I don't think he's necessarily the guy that's ever going to be champ. I think he needs to approach it a little bit differently and just come out and try and finish guys. But I don't know what was going on with him. Hopefully he comes back to the drawing board and puts it all together. But at the end of the day, tough Russian judge over here, Carlos. All I'm going to say is on paper, it says 30-27, Abus Nurmagomedov, baby. So thank you for the money.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And if you guys haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Obviously, like we keep talking about, the best bets videos do come out on Friday. So obviously had a good one this week. There'll be another couple coming out next week for the PFL and for UFC. So tune into those if you're interested in what bets we have here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And next up, that brought us to David Onama taking on Giga Chikadze. And this was a pretty good fight back and forth. I like this one. Pretty nice striking affair. Onama was able to mix in the takedowns. The hometown guy who had lived and trained out of Kansas City for many years. So he had the crowd on his side. Giga Chikadze got off to an early start. I thought that he may have won round one after the, kind of before the takedown in the last few minutes. He was landing some of the better strikes, but David Onama was able to take over and ultimately get the decision, and rightfully so. I think he did enough. I think it really just came down to that last takedown in the third round. In the last sort of 2-3 minutes, Onama was able to get a takedown in the third round, and I think that's what sealed it for him. Honestly, both guys look good. Actually, let me rephrase that. I don't think they both look good. I think they both look decent. I'm going to take a little page out of Carlos's book here. I don't necessarily think they were very impressive, but fun fight back and forth. Nothing that we haven't seen from Giga. Obviously getting old, up in there in age, getting a little bit older now, coming off of multiple surgeries on his hand and wrist. But David Onama gets the win against a ranked opponent. He's now in the rankings, and we'll see what the future holds for him. But Carlos, were you impressed with the match? Did you enjoy the fight, and what did you think of this matchup?
Thought it was a fun fight to watch. It got annoying because it's like, Onama, even though he was able to get Giga to the ground, there wasn't really much he was able to do. Like, ground and pound wasn't a big option because Giga did what he's supposed to do, control your hands and, keep himself out of danger. The problem being is, like, as soon as he gets taken down, he has no ability to get back to his feet. And I'm like, he's making Onama look like a world-class wrestler, BJJ practitioner, like he can't get off his back. I'm sure Onama's very good on the ground as well. That's not a problem. It's just the fact that, like, you are going up against a guy who's got great stand-up, and all you have to do is, the takedowns weren't even hard to get, So I don't know how Chikadze got on that run and started running through people. He even ran through people like Cub Swanson because, you could say that fight IQ probably was a little low that night. But, if you're losing on the ground, actually that fight didn't last long either. But if you're losing on the feet, maybe try to take it to the ground, and Onama just did that, and that's also what saved Calvin too when he. I think Chikadze was off balance and he jumped on him to the cage and was like, I'm going to hold him down on the ground here for dear life. That's what you do. You take him out of it. And Onama did a great job. I when I see that, I'm just like, how do you get signed to the UFC and you can't get off your back? Yeah. That's just against somebody who's not like, a world-class grappler. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, Carlos is right. You have to win by any means necessary, even if it means hitting your guy over the head with elbows, at the back of the head. But all jokes aside, Zhang got it done. I think most of those shots that he was able to land on Anthony Smith here to get the finish, I think most of them were legal. I think there was a couple that snuck in there that definitely were to the back of the head, but that ultimately
not a couple. They are almost all those were illegal.
All of them? Okay, fair enough. Different time
Pretty
zone.
much all of them.
He was on a different time zone, so the elbow lands a little
Yeah,
different when it comes from China. But no, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, all jokes aside, I don't think anything would have changed the result of this fight. I think we all kind of knew in our heart of hearts Anthony Smith was probably going to lose this one. We had the Mountain Tiger taking on Lionheart, but Zhang ultimately, back and forth affair for as long as it lasted. Zhang was able to land a nice elbow. He I think Smith kind of shot him for a takedown out of desperation because he was a little hurt. He had a nice cut on his hairline there, or lack of hairline. And ultimately, Zhang was able to find the finish. And I don't necessarily think that, I don't necessarily think that Zhang is all that. I just think Smith really has just kind of, he's on the way out. He is on the way out. And that's pretty much where it left us. He retired after this fight. We all knew coming into this fight it was going to be his last fight inside the UFC, and the UFC actually gave him a tribute that lasted longer than his fight actually did. So hats off to Anthony Smith. Thank you for all of the fights. Thank you for all of the entertaining fights, that's for sure. The guy is very, very durable. Back in the day, he did go the distance with John Jones, which they like to point out over and over again is one of his biggest accomplishments inside the UFC. But I think this one pretty much was cut and dry, exactly how we thought. And hats off to Zhang for getting it done. And I'm going to let Carlos talk a little bit about Anthony Smith and the performance overall. But what did you think of the performance, and what did you think of the tear-jerking, emotional snowflake of a performance and a video at the end there, Carlos?
I think you're being a little bit of a hater, but the performance wasn't impressive. Everybody knows that. Those elbows to the back of the head didn't matter. He was already not going to fight back. And it's good. He got a little send off from the UFC. Someone here was telling me it was a little bit too long. It was too much for Anthony Smith. I'm like, just let him have his moment. He did something good. He got in the fight and he cleaned up his life. Whatever the hell he said he did. That's great. Let him have his moment. Give it to everybody, though. That's all I'm going to say. If you're going to give it to Anthony Smith, give it to everybody. And that's put their life on the line for the UFC for a long time. But other than that, I'm like, I thought it was great. And you know what? Not only do I cry at American Idol, I almost shed a tear for my man, Anthony. I'm joking, man. But I do, yes, I do cry at American Idol every once in a while. That Ian Tongi's voice is silky. But that this Anthony Smith tribute was a tad bit long, but it was well deserved.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with Anthony Smith. I don't have a problem with any of the fights or the toughness or anything like that. At one point, he was obviously very well-rounded and pretty skilled in the division. It's just like Carlos said, which was my sentiments exactly, was I just felt like it went on a little bit too long. And guys like Dominic Cruz, Tony Ferguson spring to mind. I said to Carlos, like, they didn't get anywhere near the tribute that he did. And Tony was interim champion, and Dominic Cruz was a champion, whereas Anthony Smith hasn't actually won a belt inside the UFC. He's known for getting his ass beat recently, and I think just because he's a UFC Dana White privilege, he's liked within the organization, along with a lot of the other fighters obviously like his company and enjoy his analysis, and they're very cool with him. He's been around the sport for such a long time. They obviously wanted to give him a bigger tribute, but yeah, next time, do better, UFC. Fucking snowflakes. Anyway, that brings us to the main event. And if you've enjoyed the content, hit that like and subscribe button for the main event here with Carlos Prates taking on Ian Garry. And unfortunately, the dog of the week, I got to kick it off, is unfortunately defeated. Ian Garry was able to get it done. And I do have to admit, after I watched the first couple of rounds, it was exactly how I thought Ian Garry was going to win, if he was going to win. And if you missed it, it was pretty much a 48-47 decision here. Garry won the first 3 rounds. His movement was too much. Prates couldn't really catch him on the feet and land the big shots like he's done in previous fights. Garry fought a perfect game plan, but Prates was able to get some momentum going in rounds 4 and 5. In round 5, he dropped Garry. He was able to get on top of him, smother him, land some ground and pound. The referee looked like he was going to step in. I got excited. I thought the dog was going to make a comeback, and ultimately he decides, I'm going to get up off the ground and not continue to punch this guy in the face, let this guy up and let him run away from me for the last few seconds. So don't know what that was about from Prates. Pretty low IQ move there. He was pretty tired himself, I think, but Garry looked like he was on wobbly legs. He looked like he was about to get the finish, and I just think, I don't know what he was thinking, to be honest with you. I don't really think there was much thought at all. I think you stay there in half guard and you beat him up and land shots like he was. you might have got him out of there. But I'm actually going to give Ian Garry some credit. I thought he did what he was supposed to do. I thought he looked good in there. His movement was good. He was lighting Prates up on the feet. He doubled him up in significant strikes. And I'm going to say I'm not the biggest Ian Garry fan, but he did what he was supposed to do, and he keeps his ranking, and Prates stays on the outside looking in for the ranking. So hats off to Garry. Good for him. BBL Garry. BBL Garry. Carlos, what did you think of the matchup?
I thought, you know, we went about before the fight, like, you know, started. I go, I just feel like Gary's gonna win this, but I wanted Prates, and I didn't pick Prates, you know, based on like a passion pick. I picked him because like there's a lot of things that he does that I think cause problems for Garry, but the only thing that I thought was going to cause a problem for him, which ended up being the thing, was being able to pressure him because Gary's quick. His in and out movement's very quick. He kept his hand busy with that high kick as well, that right high kick. Um, and he did what he was supposed to do. Now, as soon as he started getting tired, which was midway through the fourth, is exactly when Prates started turning it on, because he's like, okay, now this is more of my pace of a fight. So is that the key? Is like, you know, you have to just be able to outquick Prates. It is, and people are going to look at this and go, that's the blueprint to beating him. But your movements have got to be absolutely perfect, because as you could see, he caught Garry with a couple of, I think it was just a jab, and started touching him up with the jabs. Like every time he hit him, his whole head would move. So he's got some hammers. So it's not as easy as getting in and out. You've got to read his movements. As his weight shifted to the back, okay, he can't step forward, I'm coming in. And when he's getting ready to come forward and he's got his weight leaning forward, that's when Garry goes, I'm going to let him overcommit to a strike, and then I'm going to go for the takedown. And it worked every time. It's just, I don't think anybody knew how good Prates' wrestling was going to be to get back up, and it was just fine. Like we stated, you know, just because you don't see it doesn't mean you don't have it. And if he had any jiu-jitsu, it would have been great to see in the fifth round if he went for a ninja choke, because it was there and he had the arms long enough to do it, but he just didn't go for it. I was waiting for him to pull it off. I'm like, come on, man, just tell, at the end of this fight, just tell everyone you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You saw that that ninja choke right there. I would have been so happy. I don't hate Ian Garry. He's not one of my favorite fighters, but he does, how do I put this? He puts the fight in the worst place for his opponent, and that's what he did that night. And he's done it for a lot of people. He also didn't get the job done against what was the last opponent that he had? Was Shafkat. Yep, he wasn't able to get him in that spot, but that's his thing. Is he's wherever you're the weakest at, he may not even be the strongest at, but he just brings you to that position, and that's exactly what he did to Prates, and that's what I was nervous about. But I still went Prates because, you know, who doesn't like this guy? He's like a cool breeze. He just comes out, he's relaxed, he's smooth, throws a couple punches, gets you out of there. Night's over. He has a cigarette, ready to chill.
Yeah,
I like him. I think he's going to be okay.
I'm right there with you. I think Prates is going to be fine. I don't think this necessarily hurt his stock too much. And one guy who's not going to be fine, though, Carlos, who I do have a problem with before we wrap things up, is one of the judges scored the fight 49-46. I have a big problem with that scorecard. That's a fucking terrible scorecard. And again, it was a pretty new judge. I didn't get the name ready for the show this time, but just be warned, if we start to see a few more, we have to start naming and shaming a couple of judges.
I will tell you
exactly.
Again. I will tell you exactly why that happened, to be honest with you, because we went through that here. Pooks ended up picking the fight 4-1, the exact same score for Garry. And I was like, did you see the fourth round? She's like, you thought he won that? She went the first half of the fourth round to, like, I don't know, the last 2 minutes pretty much. And obviously I took most damage from the mid-round to the end. And mid-round to the end was Prates. If you watch that, it's like the fourth round, the beginning to the middle of it was Garry. It all depends on what they thought was more important to them. Like, because Prates' output isn't that much, but he was able to do more damage in the fourth. But if you thought Gary's coming in, blitzing, and throwing a high kick and a 1-2 down the middle. That was and he was throwing in good combinations, but they weren't landing clean. If you found that more effective, I could see why it was, what did you say, 49, 46. But I think 48, 47 was the right card to have.
We're going to hold these judges accountable, ladies and gentlemen. At least I am, anyway.
We will. We
will, definitely.
Right.
And one thing you can hold us accountable.
You got to be able to see it. You got to be able to see it.
Yeah. If you're watching the fight, you've definitely got to go back. And that was actually the round that the judge who I had a problem with scored. It was that fourth round. So if you guys want to go back and watch the fight, let me know in the comments section below what you scored the fight. And one thing we got to talk about is what's coming up on the channel. And we got a couple of videos coming this week. We got PFL and UFC next week. So stay tuned. We got a Monday. We got a quick picks video that I do every week now, going through all of my picks at a very, very quick sort of quick picks version. We go through it in 20 minutes or less. I do a full card breakdown, giving you a very brief description as to why I'm picking a particular fighter with a confidence level. I keep it short and to the point. And then also, Carlos and I have a full card breakdown for the PFL on Tuesday. Light heavyweights and heavyweights this week. Obviously, we've been receiving a lot of love for the PFL. If you haven't been into the PFL, now's the time to jump on board. We got the PFL content here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And also, what I like to call the main event, we got the full card breakdown for Corey Sandhagen taking on Davidson Figueiredo in Iowa this week. And that video will be out on Tuesday, full card breakdown. And Carlos, before we wrap things up, is there anything that you want to say to the viewers sitting at home?
I guess I'd say same thing you would say. Like and subscribe. We love giving you this content, guys. Hopefully it gives you a good idea of what to do if you're a degenerate or who you think the best outcome is going to be on fight night. We enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. Like and subscribe. My man, take it away.
And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, keep an eye out for the videos coming out on Friday for the best bets video for all you degenerates, as Carlos would like to say. And we'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.